G.I. Joe is a code name for America's daring, top-secret military organization. Their mission is to stop Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world. That's right, Bill. Today we are talking about one of my all-time favorite properties, G.I. Joe.
I'm excited.
Welcome, everybody, to the Number One Comics Podcast. This is the only podcast dedicated to the review and discussion of first issues. I'm your host, Jonah. With me is Bill, and I'm super excited for this one as well. Because, like I said, I'm a bigger fan of G.I. Joe than I am comic books, than I am Transformers, than I am movies, pretty much anything else. I mean, obviously, the other's family, right? But G.I. Joe is like my first love. Before I could pull a girl, all I had was G.I. Joe.
Yep.
And I'm very excited to be talking about this one, because what we're talking about today is a new G.I. Joe title published by Image Comics, which is part of Robert Kirkman's Skybound Entertainment Company. So Skybound Entertainment Company is the studio, Image Comics is the publisher, and this book has a cover date of November of 2024. So we just had issue 12 drop last week. Nice. And I think it was last week, if I'm not mistaken. As of the day we're recording this anyway, last week. Not as of the day the episode is released. Mm-hmm. That would have been like a month. And it has a cover price of $4.99. Writer, Joshua Williamson, and the artist, Tom Riley. Yeah, with G.I. Joe, man, especially as I know and love it, it began back in 1982. I know conceptually the name G.I. Joe goes back much further than that, right? But what we're talking about is G.I. Joe as the premier team defending America or the world against a terrorist organization called Cobra. That began back in 1982. The first series was published by Marvel Comics, and that series ran for about 155 issues. Nearly every issue of that, not quite everyone, but nearly every issue of that was written by the legendary Larry Hama. He was also known for his work on Wolverine, and he was also the creator of Bucky O'Hare and the Nth Man, which is some type of ninja guy. Full disclosure, I've never read it, so no idea what it's about. Larry, though, he is considered nearly godlike status among the G.I. Joe community, and his work on the property continues to this day. With Skybound continuity, his Real American Hero story that he began back in 1982 is still running. I mean, as of this recording, again, I think we're on issue 3 something. I mean, I'll have to look it up. 360 something. I don't even know what it is, but it's up there. It's way up there.
Yeah.
And it is something that I'm still buying to this day. When he inevitably leaves the title, and it will be a sad day, but when that does happen, I fully intend to take it over. But I'm pretty sure every G.I. Joe fan out there says the exact same thing.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure every G.I. Joe fan has probably at least 24 scripts of fanfic that they're ready to go.
Oh, yeah.
When that call from Kirkman inevitably comes.
Yep.
And by inevitably, I mean not at all. Anyway, tell me a little bit about your experience with G.I. Joe.
Of course, I collected some of the toys when I was a kid. The cartoon was big as well. I think anything Hasbro related was usually something I got into. Like my buddy Sean, he was big into Transformers, so he's who kind of introduced that to me. G.I. Joe, of course, I was always a big fan of Snake Eyes because I was obsessed with ninjas when I was a kid.
Yep.
So Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow were my 2 favorite characters of all time in G.I. Joe.
I don't think we've ever been so far apart.
Really?
Because they are my least 2 favorite characters in all of G.I. Joe.
Who's your favorite G.I. Joe character?
Well, so my favorite G.I. Joe character is Flint. To the point where my son is named after him. And then I wanted to name my son Zartan, but my wife vetoed that. And then I was like, well, what about we name him Dashel?
About Destro.
And I didn't even think of Destro.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Flint is my favorite G.I. Joe character. And then, of course, I love the more obscure ones. Like, give me, like, I think I had an ongoing top 10 or top 11 list at one time. Flint, Beachhead, Outback, Tunnel Rat, let's see, Recondo, Dodger, Ambush, Freefall. I mean, I could give you a different list tomorrow, but Flint's still always at the top, regardless of who else may be there. So
nice.
The growing up, I remember getting the toys. I couldn't tell you what my first G.I. Joe was that I ever received because it predates my memory. Mm-hmm. But I do remember getting the toys. It probably was not until 1987 or 1988 that I moved from like, oh, I really enjoy this and I love playing with these toys, I love watching this cartoon. It moved to like a full-fledged obsession. And to sound like a complete dork, I never stopped playing with G.I. Joes.
Yeah.
As kids my age were getting out of it, when they were turning 12, 13 years old, I was still like fully in, like fully committed to it.
Yeah.
Even after the line ended in 1994, I was still looking for Joes, buying Joes, stealing Joes from my friends. Like, I was all about it, and never lost sight of it. It was in probably 2002 mm-hmm. when I discovered a new world of G.I. Joes that involved customizations. And I began customizing G.I. Joes.
Nice.
And I've taken about the last year off. Like, I packed some stuff up, and I'll go like super hard into it for like a year and then take like a year off.
Right.
I'm probably going to pick it up again here sooner than later. I just have to set my studio, my workspace back up again. Yeah. And I'm sure I'll get back into it. But I have customized G.I. Joes, and I probably have customized 800 figures. Nice. Over the last 20 plus years, and only using parts from like 82 to 1994 type figure construction, because that's another thing about me is, as much of a G.I. Joe fan that I am only a collector and only interested really in that 3 3/4, 1/18 scale figures.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in the new classified line that's out now, where it's out of that bigger scale. I think figures look great and the accessories are awesome, and I really appreciate them for what they are, but I don't collect them. Yeah. And I don't have any of those in my collection. Do you still have any G.I. Joe toys?
I probably don't.
If you did, I would steal them.
I don't want to get into what happened to my toy collection. It's a very sore subject for me.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I can tell you the last G.I. Joes I collected were the Mortal Kombat line.
Okay.
They had basically they were the same scale, same like articulation, everything like that. They just had, Mortal Kombat freaking exploded. So I had the entire run of the original, whatever it was, 8 combatants or whatever. And I don't think they ever got into like Mortal Kombat 2, where I think they had like Katana and Reptile and that sort of stuff. But
I have some of the Mortal Kombat figures. I don't recall there being Katana or Reptile. A lot was using like the Ninja Force spring action construction.
Yeah.
So like you'd have like Sub-Zero or Scorpion, which was pretty much the same figure as like a slice, just with a different head, essentially.
Yeah.
And so I think you had a lot of that. But did you have any of the Street Fighter ones? Do you remember those?
Oh, I did have a few of the Street Fighters. Of course, I had to get Guile because he was always my favorite.
Did you have the Guile with the Jean-Claude Van Damme head, or the kind of the more video game accurate head?
The video game one.
Okay.
I didn't get I think, didn't they release a movie line?
There was, and that's where that one, there was a Guile figure that looked completely unlike the other one, because it was quote unquote Jean-Claude Van Damme. I mean, it wasn't really Jean-Claude Van Damme, but it's supposed to be. I mean, I could go on about G.I. Joe forever. Specifically, though, we are going to be talking about the comics, this comic in particular. And I want to talk a little bit more about the history. And one of the things I wanted to dive into here was when I was getting back into comics, it was G.I. Joe that brought me back in. I had seen an ad or had caught word that Devil's Due Publishing, again through Image Comics, had received the rights and was going to be relaunching G.I. Joe. And I believe it was probably Wizard Magazine that tipped me to that. Mm-hmm. And that's what got me back into the comic shop after several years of having taken a break. And then going in and picking up that G.I. Joe comic is when I would pick up something else on the shelf that looked interesting to me, such as New Avengers or Cable and Deadpool, or a couple of the other few comics that I picked up very early on. So G.I. Joe, aside from my love of the property itself, it is what brought me back into comics as an adult. So I owe all of this essentially to G.I. Joe. Mm-hmm. Now, that relaunch, while it did kickstart my interest in comics again, I largely disliked the actual series as a whole, the actual comic series. It started off well enough, and it picked up several years after the Marvel comic run had ended, but then it quickly devolved into, for lack of a better term, like bad fan fiction. And it ran up through like issue 43. But I pretty much hated reading like all of it when it got past a certain point. Yeah. Devil's Due did publish a few good Joe titles over the years. I mean, they weren't all terrible in my opinion. There was the 18-issue Frontline series. That was pretty good. There were some special missions and some one-shots that I really enjoyed. Now, after that first 43-issue run had ended, there was a second volume titled G.I. Joe America's Elite that was launched. And that was worse than the first series, in my opinion. Up until there was a turning point, however, and that was, I believe it was with issue 21. They brought in a writer named Mark Powers. He took over the writing duties from Joe Casey. And I think Michael Sullivan, he was an editor, but he filled in for a few issues as well, kind of during that transition. But anyway, Mark Powers was brought in, and he did a 12-issue story arc called World War III, which I would argue was, well, I think it was easily the best G.I. Joe thing Devil's Due put out. Mm-hmm. And I would argue that it is probably one of the best G.I. Joe stories published like today. It was just so good. And it was sad because Devil's Due ended up losing the license after that story arc had concluded. Yeah. But I would have really liked to have seen what Powers may have had in store for the team kind of post that World War III. But the title ended up transferring, or the license ended up transferring over to a company called IDW. And IDW, they're known for their licensing of other properties. I don't know if that's so much the case nowadays, but at the time, that was kind of their bread and butter, so to speak. Yeah. They rebooted the G.I. Joe universe, and they released several Joe titles over the years. The first volume of the main book lasted about 27 issues. They had several miniseries as well as kind of an origins series. There was a title called like G.I. Joe Cobra. There was a title called Hearts and Minds. There was an Infestation miniseries. So they've had a lot of, series and miniseries. There was a second volume that ran for 21 issues, a third volume that ran for 15 issues, a fourth volume that ran for 8 issues. Now, by the time the 5th volume rolled out, which was only like a 9-issue run, IDW, they'd combined several of their licensed properties into one universe, including Mask, Rome the Space Knight, I think was in that, Transformers, Visionaries was in that, and it kind of became like this incomprehensible mess. There was, I think, a title called like First Strike or something like that we'll probably take a look at just for shits and giggles at some point. Now, among my least favorite of IDW's output, because really it's hard for me to pick a favorite because there was probably none. I don't think it was very good as a whole. But my least favorite was Scarlet's Strike Force, which was written by a guy named Audrey Sitterson. That, and then like the Transformers versus G.I. Joe by Tom Scioli. I know that has its fans, but I think the art's atrocious, and I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
Unlike Devil's Due, which I think had turned a corner at the very end, I was more than happy to see that the license was going to move away from IDW. And that is when it moved to Skybound. Now, I do want to note, even Hama's Real American Hero title during that IDW time was pretty much unreadable. Like, it was not good. If I never see a blue ninja again, it'll be too soon. Don't like those android ninjas at all. And we don't need 3 different Snake Eyes running around either. Anyway, it was at the end of 2022 when IDW had lost that license. And they lost it to both the Joe and the Transformers. And that went to Robert Kirkman's Skybound Entertainment. So they kicked off their reimagined Joe and Transformers series, and they essentially did it on the Joe side with a series of mini-series. There was one about Duke, Cobra Commander, Scarlet, and Destro. So you have like 20 issues leading up to this, essentially. They also integrated the Transformers world into the Joe world as sort of this Energon universe is what it's essentially referred to as. And like I said, those miniseries, they led up to the launch of this book. Now, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to dive in and we're going to see if this has fared better than maybe some of those previous license holders that I'd mentioned. Because like I said, I think Josh Blaylock's a heck of a nice guy. The person behind Devil's Due Publishing. I've only had a chance to meet him once, and we spent most of our time talking about whiskey. And I loved what he was able to attempt to do with G.I. Joe, even though I didn't like necessarily all of the output of it. But I also loved what they were doing towards the end. And IDW fell flat for me pretty much all across the board.
Yeah. So
I was very excited about this. So anything that you want to add before we dive into this issue?
I don't think so.
Leading up to this, I know we've already gone on forever about G.I. Joe. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to begin with the cover. This is cover B by Jerome Opeña and Dave Stewart. This is actually one of 18 covers. And have I mentioned before how much I hate variant covers? I don't collect variant covers. I'm not interested in variant covers. 1 or 2 variant covers is fine, especially when the art on the cover when it has something to do with the story inside. I've mentioned that before. But when it's a variant cover of Godzilla and he's not in the book at all because it's an X-Men comic or whatever, I fucking hate that.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case here, but 18 variant covers is a little bit excessive. I'm not a fan of that.
Agreed.
And I'm glad I'm not one of those people that has to go and track down variant covers. One thing I do not like about variant covers is it was an issue of Scarlet that I was like a few days behind on getting to the shop to get my books, and it wasn't in my pull list for whatever reason. And so when I went to buy the Scarlet comic, they were sold out, except for they had one of the variant covers for sale, but it was like $20 versus $4.
Oh,
and so I had to pay like $20 for a single comic just because of the variant cover, and I don't even give a shit about the covers. Anyway, enough about variant covers. Let's get into the inside of the issue. Or actually, let's talk a little bit more about the cover real quick. So what we have on the cover, it features our group of Joes. This includes Stalker, Covergirl, Hawk, Clutch, Rock and Roll, Duke, and Baroness. Yes, Baroness. The team is standing amongst the rubble of a battle zone. And that's essentially the cover itself. Now, let's talk about the story inside. We open with a pep talk from Duke to his team. He's revving them up for a battle against an impossible enemy. Along with this narration, we see a flashback of Duke. He's in a flight suit. He's got his fighter pilot's helmet on with the kind of the goggles down or the visor down. And in that reflection, we see a grimming Decepticon seeker in their robot mold. It's probably Starscream or something like that. We then also see Duke in a vehicle. He's being strafed by gunfire from above. We see he's bashing in the head of a Cobra bat, which is a battle android trooper. And then lastly, we see him shaking the hand of an officer when he agrees to join the team. On the very following page, we have our Joe team themselves. They're blasting out of this transport jet into battle. They've got their jump jet packs, which is strapped to their backs. This is a really cool double page splash page, and it features everyone from the cover minus Hawk. The team quickly encounters a group of flying drones. These next few pages use dialogue boxes between Duke and Hawk to introduce us to this new team. We have Rock and Roll, a.k.a. Craig McConnell. He's a heavy artillery specialist. He's a surfer dude with a big heart, and he's loyal to a T. We've got Stalker, Lonzo Wilkinson, a linguist that's as good talking people down with words as he is taking them out with weapons. There's Covergirl, Courtney Krieger. She's a former model who likes to build tanks. Clutch, Lance Steinberg. He's the best driver, both on the streets and out in the field. And then we've got the Baroness. She's a known war criminal that Duke met while they were both locked up, imprisoned. While it's not an ideal choice, her skills are undeniable. The Baroness, speaking of the Baroness, she has taken out one of the drones, but her jetpack shorts out and she begins plummeting towards the ground. Duke goes after her. A collection of drones blocks his path, but he lobs a 40mm grenade. It blows a hole right through him. He dives for the Baroness, he reaches her, and he manages to restart her jump jetpack just before they both hit the ground. On the ground, the Baroness curses the Americans' shoddy equipment, and if this had been a real fight, they're outmatched, they're outgunned, and they're way behind in tech. Clearly, they're not ready. We cut to a nice little town called Springfield. This is where Destro watches a squad of troops marching past a column of Cobra Hisses. Some people refer to the Hiss as a tank. I will argue that the Hiss is not a tank. It stands for High Speed Sentry. Cobra is using recently discovered Energon. That's the fuel source that powers the Transformers, essentially, if you recall from those Transformers cartoons back in the day. Mm-hmm. So they're using Energon to upgrade their weapons. This is going to increase their destructive capabilities tenfold. The Energon is used to fuel the battle android troopers and other assets. Destro tells Cobra Commander that it's not enough. Cobra Commander, he's tinkering with his mechanical hand. His face, scarred, is hidden by shadow. He puts on his uniform and then his chrome-plated helmet. The commander agrees with Destro that, they need so much more in their quest for world domination. Destro brings in a Cobra agent named Mercer. He brings Mercer in to show the commander a new weapon that he's developed. And the commander is initially not impressed that all Destro seems to do is make guns. The commander, with the rifle, takes aim at a target, and he is told the rifle is armed with Energon. It essentially fires bursts of energy, riddling this target, the body armor and all, into bits and pieces. Mercer comments that he's always wanted his own laser gun, and the commander is very impressed by this. We then cut to a club in Abu Dhabi where A new G.I. Joe agent named Risk approaches a guy seated at a table with a few ladies and bodyguards. Risk clearly isn't welcome there, and he's told at gunpoint that he shouldn't have come. A swift punch takes out one of the bodyguards, and an order goes out to kill this new Joe. He takes several men in hand-to-hand combat. He breaks one guy's arm, elbows another in the face. He delivers a volley of punches into one guy's face, and then the last attacker is taken down with a swift knee to the face. That attacker falls through the table, and Risk is left sort of alone with just that lead guy that's still seated at a couch. Risk has a warning for that last man. He states, "Don't sell to Mars Industries." Risk then gets a notification on his wrist communicator that there's been a change in plans and he's to return home. Back at the pit, which is the G.I. Joe's base of operations, Duke is watching the sunset when he's approached by Hawk. I almost said General Hawk, but I think Hawk's only a colonel at this time.
Yeah.
Duke is contemplating how he's going to turn the group into a team. Hawk advises Duke to embrace what makes each member great and showcase it. Leading isn't about pointing out their flaws. Hawk goes on to tell Duke a story about his first time with a command. He trained his men to be just like him, but all that went out the window once they hit the battlefield. And it was who those men really were took over, but it was how they survived, and it was what made them great. The point is, or his point is to Duke, that he already has one Duke on the team, and he doesn't need any more. Each member needs to be the best version of themselves. Hawk tells Duke to get back to the barracks and get some rest, because tomorrow they're going on their first mission. The next morning, the team is gathered in a briefing room. Clutch is sketching out a pencil drawing of the VAMP, which is the team's original vehicle. It stands for Vehicle Attack and Multi-Purpose. Rock and Roll comments that it needs more firepower, which Clutch agrees. Duke enters the room. He begins stating that G.I. Joe was formed to combat deadly energy weapons technology, especially massive robots that disguise themselves as vehicles. We see this with an image of Optimus Prime on the screen behind him. Duke goes on to state that there was a crash in the Pacific Ocean, and this alien tech has been recovered, and a piece of it is being taken to a lab in Colorado. There's also been a series of break-ins recently at different weapons and technology facilities, including facilities owned by Mars Industries. Essentially, someone is trying to get their hands on the very same weapons that this team has been put together to try and stop. At the same time, Duke is briefing his team. Destro is briefing Cobra troops. They've tracked or traced the Energon to that lab in Colorado. And his orders are for them to go and essentially support Mercer and his Vipers so that they can acquire the tech and then get out quietly. Cobra Commander adds this, his own order in essentially. He says, kill everyone they come across, except for one. Leave a witness to spread word and fear the name Cobra. In Colorado, the Joe team is guarding this shard of alien tech. The Baroness sees this as a waste of her time and her talents. Baroness and Stalker exchange insults in whatever native tongue the Baroness speaks, which this showcases a little of the tension between the two, as well as Stalker's cunning linguistic abilities. Duke breaks the two up suddenly. All of the monitors at this time, they turn to static, and then they glow red with this Cobra sigil. Duke hollers for everyone to get down. Outside the building, a Cobra Fang gyrocopter strafes the top floor with machine gun fire. Inside, the team scatters for cover. They're coming in from the outside. Cobra troops, they've entered the building. And the Joes attempt to regroup. Rock and Roll, he just took a hit. Duke knows that they're about to have company. Duke orders Rock and Roll, Clutch, and Cover Girl to get the acid out of there. Stalker and Baroness are to cover them. As for Duke, he plans on taking out the enemy's air cover. So he leaps out of the window and he grabs onto the landing skid of the Fang. Now, watching from a monitor, Cobra Commander comments that Duke is insane. Destro assures him that it's no worry, they have the upper hand. Inside the building, the invaders open fire. The Joes shoot back as they try to figure out a way to move the shard. Stalker thinks the troops are actually retreating when they start to pull back. However, a grenade lands at his feet and it explodes, creating a large blast, blowing out the side of the building. We see Stalker lying on the ground, unconscious or dead, and then a foot appears. The initial wave of troops, they didn't retreat. They simply pulled back, making way for Mercer and his Vipers. The Vipers open fire with their laser guns. Standing over Clutch and Cover Girl who'd taken cover behind the shard, Mercer tells them that they're welcome to gift wrap it for him. Rock and Roll hits Mercer in the back of the helmet. He tries taking on the other Vipers, but Mercer drills Rock and Roll with a massive punch. Duke, who had tossed the Fang pilot out, he's now manning the gyrocopter, and he asks Rock and Roll, what is he doing? Rock and Roll tells him not to worry. He's been shot before, and he can handle a light show. Rock and Roll rushes the Vipers again, but literally gets lit up by two shooters punching 8 laser bolts right through his body. With that, we are to be continued. Bill, thoughts?
I might be in the minority here with among G.I. Joe and Transformer fans, but I've always found myself rooting more for the bad guys.
Sure.
Because I think the Decepticons and Cobra are way cooler than
They
G.I.
always
Joe and the
they always
Autobots.
looked cooler. They had cooler toys. They had cooler weapons.
Yeah.
I totally get that.
Yeah. That being said, I like Cobra Commander and Destro in this.
Mm-hmm.
I always kind of liked their dynamic. It was kind of like they need each other, but they hate each other.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And combining the worlds of G.I. Joe and Transformers is a really cool idea. Making weapons from the Energon kind of reminded me of Captain America: The First Avenger.
Yes.
Where Hydra's making weapons from the Tesseract.
Yep.
Kind of like that, but you know.
Very similar that way. And now, and I've always preferred my toy universes kept separate. Like, I never liked the idea of Transformers and G.I. Joe necessarily being merged. However, I think that they've done a really good job of establishing this universe and merging them together in such a way that it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's done much better here than how I've seen it done in the past. So I don't mind it at all. And also what I like about this is it allows the world building to lean heavily into the sci-fi.
Yeah.
And that's always been one of my favorite aspects of G.I. Joe was the more out there components.
Yeah.
Mega Marines, Star Brigade. I love that shit.
Yeah.
And so I'm all here for it.
Yeah.
So I've totally done a 180 on my thoughts as far as that goes. What an exciting issue, in my opinion. While, like I said, there was the miniseries that led up to this. I don't think it's necessary to have read those to enjoy this, because you didn't read any of those miniseries.
No, and I still really
especially
enjoyed it.
considering you're vaguely familiar with who the characters are. Like, you know who Cobra Commander is, you know who Destro is.
Yeah.
So you don't need a 5-issue miniseries introducing them.
Right.
I will say this. Of those miniseries, the Cobra Commander one was my favorite because they don't shy away from Cobra Law in the least. And at first I was like, it's going to be terrible. But no, I loved it.
Yeah.
It was awesome that way. I also like with this that we're kind of introduced to the Joe team very early on. And so you've got this smaller core cast of characters that we can slowly expand over time. Mm-hmm. We don't have Snake Eyes in this, which I love because he is the most popular Joe, but he is my least favorite Joe.
Yeah.
And not having him shoved down my throat is nice.
I can see that. Yeah.
let's talk about each of the characters because they're all different in their own ways. We've got Hawk, who, like I said, he's a colonel at this point. He's always been one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. I've also always been a Duke fan. And there was people who always looked at kind of Duke as a replacement for Hawk. I certainly see why you need both.
Yeah.
Why you need Hawk's he's not the guy in the chair. That's not the right term for it, but he's the guy he's the administrator. He's the one that's holding everything together. That said, he's not afraid to get his hands dirty when he needs to.
Yeah.
Duke is the guy in the trenches.
Right.
The one the NCO that's leading the men in the field.
Yeah.
CoverGirl is awesome. Always been a fan of CoverGirl. Clutch has always been awesome, especially the way that Clutch and CoverGirl have a tendency to play off one another. Both of them kind of being, grease monkeys. Him being really greasy. They've even, like, his file cards even said he uses like motor oil as hair gel type thing.
Yeah.
To slick his hair back. CoverGirl, the model who likes to build tanks. Stalker. I've always been a Stalker fan. Rock and Roll's cool. Sadly, it looks like Rock and Roll is not going to make. He's not long for this Joe run.
Yeah.
And then you got the Baroness. What are your thoughts on the Baroness being a Joe member?
I think it kind of makes sense. I mean, I don't know. Granted, I don't know a lot of like backstory to G.I. Joe, other than like the movies.
Yep.
Right. I always think it is kind of a cool dynamic when you bring in like a former villain to an all-hero team, because they kind of are going to know how the bad guys think. That's kind of a cool dynamic with that. I've always liked Baroness anyway, so I'm like, yeah, okay, bring her in.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that.
I think it's inevitable. She's going to betray them and join Destro.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to happen. Now, when it happens is going to be the question. And that's what I'm interested to see, is what does that look like?
Right.
Mercer, on the other hand, is a Cobra Viper in this. He is famously introduced in the G.I. Joe animated movie as one of Sergeant Slaughter's renegades. He was a Cobra Viper that defected, and he actually becomes a Joe. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we're going to see them swap or what's going to happen there. If we see Mercer become a G.I. Joe at some point, I think that's interesting. But I really like this idea of having Baroness on their side for now, especially considering she's not a hero. I mean, they even said like she's a convicted war criminal, but she's got some talents. She's a good fit, I think, for this particular team. But I think it's going to be inevitable that at some point she's probably going to not be a good fit any longer, and she'll find her way to Destro.
Right.
So the last page. What'd you think of the last page?
Really cool artwork. I liked a lot of the artwork in this, honestly, but kind of a gut punch too at the same time, because unfortunately with G.I. Joe, they're always going to win, kind of thing. So it's kind of like, okay, is this the moment where it really gets flipped on their head and like they have to regroup and, oh no, it's Duke's first mission, you got somebody killed, or how's that gonna like kind of play out? But I mean, I liked it. I think it kind of gives it some impact.
It does. I did not see it coming, especially someone who and I grew up not just on the G.I. Joe cartoon, but fully into the G.I. Joe comic books. And they did not, it's not that death occurred all the time in the comics. Mm-hmm. Usually when someone died in the comics, it was because that toy was being phased out in favor of a new character or a different toy.
Yeah.
Like there was a one of my all-time favorite G.I. Joe stories to this day is the Battle of Benzine that began back around like issue 107, 108, something along those lines. And famously, they kill off a huge number of Joes. They basically have a Saw Viper who's armed with like his name implies, a squad automatic weapons Viper. Mm-hmm. So he's got this machine gun, and he basically just like blows away Doc and so many others, because you didn't need Doc anymore. You had Lifeline, and you didn't need Quick Kick when you had Snake Eyes. You didn't need Crankcase when you had something else. And so they just killed off like all these characters in this story arc. I'm not... In fact, the very first G.I. Joe comic I ever picked up was part of that Battle of Benzine. And I remember I picked it up at a convenience store on the corner near my house. And it was the issue where Sneak Peek gets killed, trying to rescue... He gets basically drawn out into a trap or an ambush, and he gets gunned down. Mm-hmm. And I'd only known the cartoon before that and the toys before that. And I picked that up and read that, and I was like, holy shit, this is so different than anything else.
Yeah.
So the death doesn't necessarily surprise me. Now, what surprises me is that it's in the first issue.
Yeah.
But what I think is what it does, I mean, it does establish Cobra as a viable threat and not the mustache twirling Saturday morning cornball that, you know, with stormtroopers that we were so used to for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're dangerous in this, and I like that setup. Granted, it seems like we're losing a Joe in the process, a classic Joe in the process, but
right.
It is what it is. Williams' writing, I think, is excellent. The pacing is really good. The dialogue boxes, they're not filled with just exposition. It gives us information, but they're also really allowing the art to tell a lot of the story as well. So the art's pulling a lot of the weight, and the art is fantastic. I love that almost similar style to what we saw in the Creature Commandos, right? Where it's kind of sketchy.
Yeah.
And then the colors is almost like watercolor, and it's crisp, it's clean. I love the kinetic energy that it has. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
The exchange between Hawk and Duke, I think that's really well scripted, and as well as the exchange between Cobra Commander and Destro, both of those are really well scripted. As you'd mentioned, it does a really good job of establishing the dynamic between those characters and the relationships between those characters. Mm-hmm. If I was to have one minor nitpick with this, and it is really only a minor nitpick, and that is the introduction of the new character Risk. Because all of the other Joe characters are introduced with, this is their name, this is their real name, and kind of, here's a picture of them surfing, or here's a picture of her in a tank, or whatever. And then we get Risk, and so it took me a few readings to realize what his name even was, because it's only seen on like the little Risk communicator at the end of the scene. Yeah. There's no allusion to it otherwise. And so I had to go back and reread that. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, who is this dude? Because at first I was like, is this Duke? Is this somebody else? So that's really the only minor nitpick I had about this whole issue was that one particular scene. Overall, though, I really dug this. As I said, I'm a huge G.I. Joe fan, but I'm always open to new interpretations of it. I'm not such a, one of those diehard, it's Larry Hama's way or no way type things. I think there's always room for new interpretations of it. Yeah. And especially when they're not afraid to lean into the more sci-fi aspects of the Joe world. As the example, like I said, that Cobra miniseries it was not shying away from Cobra Law as a origin, and it was all the better for it. Yeah. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and rank this, unless you've got any other final thoughts.
No, I'm good.
Would you have bought the next issue, at least read it, skipped it, or would you have rather gotten ventilated by laser guns than read this?
I definitely would read the next issue.
Yeah, I would. For me, it was a buy. I would buy the next issue. I did buy the next issue. The team's all beat to shit. Full disclosure, spoiler alert: Rock and Roll doesn't make it. The team loses this first battle, and so we talk about how G.I. Joe always wins, but in this case, not necessarily. They might still win the war someday, but this is a battle that they lost, unfortunately. Yeah, and it's more exciting that way. And I like it. So, great issue. I love this run so far. Like I said, issue 12 just came out. Oh, and I did have to look it up. when I was talking about where we're at with Larry Hama's Real American Hero run. Issue 322 comes out in a few weeks.
Oh, wow.
So it comes out, it'll actually probably be coming out right around a week. It'll be out a week before this episode's probably released.
Nice.
So yeah, issue 320. I mean, that thing's been running for a long time, and it's still going strong. And it is what it is. I enjoy it sometimes.
Yeah.
But check this out. Special thanks to everyone at the Field of Geeks Network for helping to make this happen. Thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow us on Facebook. You can find us at Field of Geeks, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Just look up Field of Geeks. Also, you can find us on Facebook at the #1 Comics Podcast. Special thanks to Raven X as well for the theme song. And with that, I bid you all good night.